Thanks for joining us as we continue our coverage of the search and rescue operation from a sunken ferry off Korea's southwest. It's Wednesday, April 23rd here in Seoul, and I'm Choi Yoo-sun. With the investigation into this tragic disaster widening and speeding up, more crew members now find themselves in custody. For more, we now turn to our Laah Hyun-kyung standing by at the news center. Hyun-kyung, what's the latest?
Yoo-sun, the special prosecutorial team is broadening the scope of their investigation. Authorities are now looking for irregularities in the overall port operation business. Offices of the Korea Shipping Association were raided just a couple of hours ago, and that comes after the team raided some 10 offices and homes of the practical owner of the Sewol-ho ferry operator Yoo Byung-eon earlier in the day. Prosecutors are closely looking into whether Yoo and his two sons have made illegal overseas transactions, evaded taxes, or embezzled funds. Yoo's two sons are the biggest shareholders of the ferry operators holding company, and the Yoo family reportedly owns assets worth more than $230 million, excluding debt and assets kept outside of the country. And since yesterday, the National Tax Service is conducting a special probe into 4 firms closely related to Chung Hae-jin Marine Company, and dozens of personnel, including Yoo and the two sons, are currently under a travel ban.
Hyun-kyung, and some screenshots from the time of the accident show that the crew could have released some of the life floats. Is that right?
That is right, and that's contrary to what one of the arrested crew members said yesterday. Let's take a look.
We tried, but couldn't get near the life floats. We really did try, but it was so slippery that we couldn't get there.
But pictures released show that the crew members getting onto rescue boats while a Coast Guard official is hanging tight onto the guardrail trying to release the life floats, and he succeeds. The official was able to kick 2 of the life floats into the sea, and there were more than 40 life floats on the Sewol-ho ferry, and these pictures will likely cause people to ask even more what-if questions. Also, the now arrested crew members claim the ship was listed 90 degrees when the crew was told to evacuate, but those pictures show that it was only listed about 50 degrees. So you can imagine how this could fuel even more anger, not only among the affected family members, but also among the general public as well.
And we're just getting reports that investigators have charged crew members with homicide?
Yes, that is correct. The police and the prosecution, which are jointly investigating the case, say they've charged those taken into custody with negligent homicide. Investigators believe the crew members had room to at least try to save the passengers, and 11 out of the 15 crew members who all survived are now in custody. Among those, of course, is the captain, Captain Lee Jun-seok. He is charged with 5 offenses, including negligence of duty and violating ship crew law, which mandates the crew to secure the safety of all passengers in emergency situations. Some of the crew have reportedly shown signs of regret, admitting to their mistakes and saying, in hindsight, they should have taken rescue measures. And as for verifying the exact cause of the sinking, investigators are planning on running a simulation, but experts say it will take at least 6 months because basic data, including the vessel's floor plans and speed, will have to be gathered before they build a model ship, and all of that will only be possible after the ship is salvaged. Yoo-sun.
All right, Hyun-kyung, thank you for that update. Another piece has been added to the puzzle of what may have caused the Sewol-ho to capsize abruptly. Local media are reporting that there may have been a problem with the steering gear of the sunken ferry for weeks leading up to the accident. Our Park Ji-won has the details.
This is a repair request form submitted by the crew of the Sewol-ho ferry to ferry operator Chung Hae-jin Marine Company about 2 weeks before the tragic accident. It says the steering gear of the now sunken ferry was sending no voltage warnings. Crew members said they had to reset the power and rely on an onboard power supply while they were waiting for power to be restored. The request form added the fundamental cause of the issue was unknown. However, the ferry operator took no action on the issue. Korean broadcaster YTN reported Wednesday that a ship repair company that had worked on the Sewol-ho ferry before said it had not repaired the steering gear of the Sewol-ho ferry any time recently, nor had it received any repair requests about the steering gear. Experts say the steering gear is key to safe sailing for a ship, that any problem in the steering gear increases the likelihood of an accident, and that ships with steering system problems should be prevented from setting sail. However, Cheonghaejin Marine Company appears to have continued to allow the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry to operate for more than 2 weeks, leading up to the accident last week. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Experts in Japan have run a simulation to try to determine what caused the Sewol-ho to capsize. All signs point to the ferry's cargo, which they believe was not loaded properly. Our Son Jung-in has more.
This is closed-circuit television footage of the Sewol-ho ferry on the day of her departure from Incheon Harbor. Vehicles are loaded onto the vessel one after another, 30 more automobiles than was previously declared. The last vehicle is loaded and just 3 minutes later, the ferry sets sail. Experts say that's not enough time for the crew to correctly secure the freight.
We assume the crew tied only 2 ropes instead of 4. They may have just tied things up loosely before the departure.
Japanese researchers carried out a simulation to find out what happens when freight in a vessel is not fastened up properly. They made a model 1/50th the real size of the Sewol-ho and raised the center of mass in consideration of the fact that the Sewol-ho ferry had been renovated recently. First, they ran the simulation without any cargo. Sailing at 5 kilometers per hour, the same speed as the Sewol-ho, when turned right, the model sharply leaned outward toward the turn due to centrifugal force, but did not capsize. Next, they added some weight to the ship to account for the mass of the freight and fastened it tightly. When given an abrupt turn, the model again tilts sharply to one side, but is able to balance back without falling. Then they tried again, this time with the same amount of weight, but without fixing it properly. At first, it seemed to be navigating smoothly, but as soon as it makes a sharp turn, it listed to one side and capsized in a matter of seconds.
When a vessel makes a sharp turn without its freight properly fastened, a heavier centrifugal force is applied, causing the vessel to list more outward. In extreme cases, the ship can capsize.
It is common for the captain or the chief mate to take at least an hour to make sure all cargo is secured tight before setting sail. Japanese experts say there was no time to do that in the Sewol-ho's case last week, which leads them to believe that improper fastening of the freight may have been the main cause of the accident. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Let's now go over to our Hwang Sang-hee, who's been reporting from the nearest port from the accident site. Sang-hee, dozens of bodies were retrieved in the search operations overnight, but still no word of a single survivor.
That's right, Yoo-sun. We are now into our 8th day of search and rescue operations, but not a single survivor has been found since the day of the capsizing. The death toll continues to rise rapidly. Now, most of the bodies retrieved today were high school students, and we still have around 150 people still missing inside the sunken ship, and many of them, nearly 90% of them, are high school students, from Tanwon High School. The families of the missing camping out here at the Pengmokang Harbor are clinging to every last shred of hope, but now they are beginning to grow restless. I've seen family members who've received reports confirming the death of their child collapse and pass out, and others are weeping and crying out into the open sea, telling their children to return. With the rising death toll, temporary funeral parlors have been set up at this harbor. Yoo-sun?
Sang-hee, how's the search and rescue operation going? Any progress being made?
Well, the rescue teams are focusing their search on the 3rd and 4th floors of the vessel. Now, that's where the cabins are, and authorities believe that many of the passengers were in their cabins at the time of the accident. Now, this was backed up by one of the passengers on the Sewol-ho ferry. Let's take a listen.
I was rescued early, so I don't know the current situation. But based on what I saw, there were students on the 3rd and 4th floors, where the cabins are. They were told to wait, and that's why it became too late to rescue them.
He was one of the first to be rescued when the ferry capsized, but his wife still remains in the sunken ship. But authorities said there were no air pockets in some of the compartments searched on the 3rd and 4th floor, which really reduces the chances of finding survivors. And unfortunately, high-tech drones like the remotely operated vehicles are not yielding many results. More than 200 rescue ships, 34 aircraft, and 550 divers are continuing their rescue operations. Yusan, it's been a week since the tragedy, and messages of support for those still missing in the sunken ship were sent to Pyeongmugang Harbor from across the nation. The messages read, "We love you all," and that we believe that miracles will happen. This was Hwang Sang-hee reporting from Pyeongmugang Harbor.
All right, thank you, Sang-hee, and please do keep us updated in the next newscast. The entire nation is mourning the abrupt loss of so many young lives. Koreans are holding candlelight vigils, making donations on and offline, and trying to cope with this tragic incident altogether. In Ansan, the city touched the most by this tragedy, a memorial service is taking place to pay tributes to the young victims of Tanwon High School. We have our Kim Ji-yeon joining us live from the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall. Ji-yeon?
Yusan, I'm standing in the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, where an altar has been set up so that the public can say their last goodbyes to the fallen. More than 3,600 people have come here today to pay their respects. And as you can see behind me, portraits of 48 high school students and teachers are displayed. But this is a temporary altar, and local authorities are setting up a funeral in a larger location as more bodies are expected to arrive in the coming days. A group funeral will be held at Ansan's Hwarang Recreational Park so that the public can pay their respects starting Tuesday.
Ji-yeon, setting up a memorial altar must require a lot of help, and from what I hear, a lot of volunteers are chipping in.
Yusan, citizens of Ansan and volunteers from all over the country are coming here to lend a helping hand, bringing necessities and medical supplies.
To help support our community in this time of need, we have made all of our medicine and resources available to Danwon High School, and will continue to do so until the altar is removed.
This could not have been possible without the help of the community. The nation is coming together in times of crisis.
Ji-yeon, our hearts really do go out to all the victims and their families. What about the student survivors? How are they doing, and when are they going home?
Well, Yusan, majority of the students have been in the hospital for over a week, and they are to be discharged later this week in the coming days. But some of the guardians of the parents want them to stay in the hospital due to concerns of mental trauma. In the high school, some 50 counselors are on standby for the students so that they can receive regular counseling sessions and medications if needed. This was Kim Ji-yeon live at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall.
14 teachers from Tanwon High School were on the ill-fated trip to the resort island of Jeju when the Sewol-ho ferry sank. On that Wednesday, when the ferry capsized, 3 teachers were rescued while 11 were unaccounted for. One of those teachers who didn't make it was more concerned about her students than herself until the very end. Chun Soo-young was her name, and our Connie Lee has her story.
In the last desperate moments before the ship was going down, a daughter texts her mother, "Mom, the ship is sinking." In shock and in confusion, the mother calls her daughter, Chun Soo-young, right away.
얼른 구명조끼 입어 이렇게 있거든요. 그랬더니 엄마, 학생들은 입었어 이렇게 얘기를 하는 거예요. 그 말은 제가 지금 생각해 보면 학생들은 입혔는데 저는 못 입었다는 얘기죠.
To her boyfriend, Soo-young texts him that there are no life vests. "I'm sorry." The boyfriend calls her immediately, but they hang up after 12 seconds on the line. Soo-young tells him that she needs to call her students' parents.
배가 기울고 있는데 애들 빨리 입히고 챙겨야 된다고 그러더니 자기 배터리 없다고 지금 학부모 연락하고 애들 챙겨야 된다고 그러더니 끊는 거예요.
Her last words to her boyfriend, "I love you and thank you." It was Soo-young's second year as a homeroom teacher at Danwon High School. And as for the school's yearly field trip, this one to Jeju Island on the Sewol-ho ferry was her first. Her room remains untouched since the day she left for the ill-fated trip. Her bike, too, remains parked, waiting for Soo-young to return. Apparently, her grandmother is also waiting for her granddaughter to come home safely.
지금도 그 할머니는 저 딸이 살아있는 줄 아세요. 뱃속에 들어있어서 안전하다고 그러시거든요. 계속 그렇게 믿고 계세요.
But as much as there is sadness over the loss, her mother is also proud of her daughter, who put the lives of her students before her own. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
The whole nation is in grief as hundreds of parents, relatives, and friends are still waiting for any bit of information about their loved ones that remain missing. Many of them have been on Jindo Island for a week now. To reach out a helping hand to them, people across the country are sending them letters of hope and care packages. Our Kwon So-ah has more.
Jindo's post office is backed up with letters and daily necessities for the families still waiting for their loved ones to return into their arms. People from all around the country are reaching out their hand to those affected by the tragic Sewol-ho ferry accident. A total of 3,300 care packages sent through registered mail have been counted at the post office in Jindogun County as of Wednesday morning. But many more wait to be processed. From bread and bananas to beverages and daily necessities like toothbrushes and shampoo, all were sent to help the families camping out on Jindo Island, most in the Jindo Indoor Auditorium. A post office employee says 70% of the parcels come from schools, but many also are sent from women's support organizations and volunteer groups. They say that they usually use 1 8-ton truck to sort mail a day, but these days they need more than 4. For easy sorting, the packages often have descriptions on them of what is inside. Others have messages on them, such one which reads, "You were born like a miracle, so please come back like a miracle." Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
After the tragic Sewol-ho ferry accident, which took many innocent lives on board, the government is now stepping up to prevent future accidents from happening here in the nation in hopes of making Korea a safer place. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The Sewol-ho ferry tragedy has forced the government to take a look at the level of safety awareness and preparedness in the nation. To make sure such accidents are prevented in the future, the government said Wednesday that it plans to carry out intensive safety checks on all major industrial and transportation facilities in the nation. The inspections were ordered by President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Chung Hong-won. Improper safety inspections have been blamed as one of the reasons for the disaster. Some of the facilities that will be subject to checks include industrial complexes, trains, ports, tunnels, and bridges, as well as ships like the Sewol-ho ferry. The nationwide inspection is set to begin on May 9th, but the government will first ask the government and civilian operators of such facilities to carry out voluntary safety checks for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, a new bill called the Student Safety Act was passed by a subcommittee within the National Assembly on Wednesday. It would require all schools to conduct a safety education process before going on school trips. In addition, the Culture Ministry also hopes to make Student Safety Day a national holiday. They plan to speak with family members of 5 students who were killed last summer while attending a Marine Corps camp for help organizing it. Lee Seung-jae, ARIRANG News.
Anytime the presidents of South Korea and China talk, the topic of North Korea usually dominates the conversation. But the Sewol-ho ferry disaster was foremost on the minds of President Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping Wednesday when they spoke over the phone. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
In a phone conversation Wednesday, President Park Geun-hye thanked Chinese leader Xi Jinping for his words of comfort to the victims of the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry disaster and expressed sadness that some Chinese passengers were still among the missing. Xi said he was also deeply saddened by the fact that the majority of the missing and deceased were young students. He added that his thoughts were with the victims and their families. The Chinese president also said that Beijing will provide search and rescue assistance to Seoul. The two leaders also talked about North Korea. President Park urged her Chinese counterpart to dissuade Pyongyang from carrying out a 4th nuclear test, saying it would change the security paradigm in Northeast Asia. Park said another nuclear test could start an arms race and create a nuclear domino effect in the region. North Korea carried out nuclear tests in 2006, 2009, and 2013. President Park added that a 4th test could also hamper efforts to resume the stalled multinational talks aimed at denuclearizing North Korea. She reassured Park that both nations share the same interest of a denuclearized North Korea. He said that Beijing would do its best to help maintain peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The Chinese leader added that he would encourage dialogue between the related parties and also express support for the trust-building process initiated by Park and for a peaceful reunification of the two Koreas. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
North Korea is fully prepared to conduct a nuclear test, according to the South Korean government. With U.S. President Barack Obama having embarked on his Asia tour this Wednesday, there's been fresh speculation Pyongyang may attempt to make a statement while he's in the region in the form of a 4th nuclear test. For more on this, our Shin Se-min has the details.
South Korea's defense ministry says North Korea is ready to conduct a nuclear test at any time. In a press briefing Wednesday, a Ministry of National Defense official said the North Punggye-ri nuclear test site appears to be on standby with an open ticket in hand. This would run counter to what a recent report by the U.S.-based North Korea analysis site 38 North suggests. It says it's unlikely that the regime will carry out a 4th nuclear test while U.S. President Barack Obama is visiting the region over the next week. The report cited analysis of satellite imagery, which indicates the recent activities at the nuclear site differ from those leading up to past tests. But a Korean official said the data on the 38 North website is different from what the government has. The U.S. says it is keeping close watch on movements in the North amid speculation that it may carry out a 4th nuclear test. Speaking to reporters on Air Force One, White House spokesman Jay Carney said the U.S. is monitoring movements at the North Punggye-ri nuclear test site. The U.S. State Department echoed Carney's sentiment and urged North Korea to exercise restraint.
We continue to urge North Korea to refrain from actions that threaten regional peace and security and to comply with its international obligations and commitments.
Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Today, the weather on Jindo has been much more favorable compared to yesterday. For more, we go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Yusan, all efforts must be put into rescue operations through Friday as strong winds and showers are on the way this weekend. At the moment, things remain fairly good on Jindo. The wind speed is down at 4.3 meters per second, which is approximately half the speed we got yesterday. Also, waves continue to remain calm at half a meter. Now, tidal currents are moving at an average rate of about 1.6 meters per second. However, that should further drop to half a meter per second later tonight at around 8:35 p.m. We will get 4 more of these similar opportunities tomorrow, so hopefully more progress could be made then. As for the weather on Tindo for tomorrow, it looks to be better than today. Sunny skies are forecast with calm waves and breezy winds. That's all the weather updates for Tindo at this hour, and I'll be back with the latest in just about an hour.
Thank you, Bo-kyung, and that's all we have for you this hour. But stay with us for more on day 8 of the sunken ferry search efforts on our next newscast in just about half an hour.